Everyone, welcome back. Today we want to take a look at the Ferrari SF25, a new report. Some really encouraging reports that are coming out. It's specifically saying here from Auto Racer, I believe this is Auto Racer Italy, a Ferrari built to exploit Hamilton and Leclerc's talent. So the way most people are framing it, the way I'm framing it, is that the team perhaps built the car to support both drivers. And Lewis tends to have a very agreeable driving style and preference in the way his cars are designed and built. Unlike, say, Max Verstappen has a very unusual racing style and his needs for a Formula One car, which means that when other drivers step into Max Verstappen car, it is very difficult. It is very unresponsive because Max Verstappen likes his car very different from normal Formula One drivers. The way Alex Albon explained it is that, Alex Albon, he likes a sensitive car, a pointy front end, and he's usually known for the person who has a very sensitive front end, a very, direct car. But Max just takes it to another level. So for Alex to be driving a car with such a development, he said even if you breathe on the steering wheel, it would take you completely off course. It is that sensitive. Now, Lewis is known for having a very agreeable driving style and what he needs in a car. Usually his teammates can still be somewhat competitive in the car that is designed around Lewis. So Ferrari revealed online that the first image of the new, called SF-25, a name in close continuity with the previous one. The livery, as expected, is a dark red tone, interpreted by the presence of white, which has already returned more cumbersome during the 2024 compared to carbon black. So Ferrari car has been almost completely rebuilt. They say they're building this thing like 99% is different. So it's rebuilt to change the basic behavior and to improve its operation compared to last season. The deficit in qualifying and in the first stage of the race should have been erased. Teams update simulations with the new aerodynamic load values are in line with expectations. In other words, an increase in performance and efficiency in all operating conditions seems possible. Nevertheless, no one can be complacent. And that is very important because, I just shared on Twitter that basically this is what I said, enjoy your excitement. At the end of the day, if the car doesn't work as intended, that's really out of our control. It's out of our hands and control. So just live for the moment and enjoy this chapter. Enjoy this chapter in Ferrari's history. Enjoy this chapter in Lewis Hamilton's history of his career. Nevertheless, Ferrari will be successful. That I'm confident about. They will win a championship, most likely the Constructors' Championship, because they have the best driver lineup. And providing that the car is competitive, similar to last year, well, the Constructors' Championship is it's in their hands. I believe the Constructors' Championship will be in Ferrari's hands for majority of the season this year. And it's not like I'm being over excited, like Lewis is going to win the championship or Leclerc is going to win. I'd prefer it if one of the Ferrari drivers win. I'd prefer it if Lewis wins the drivers' championship. But just looking at the Constructors' Championship for a moment, I think Ferrari has that. They're very confident because the only thing that stopped them last year was obviously the dip in Imola, the performance dip after Imola, but also the lackluster performance from Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz had significantly less points compared to his teammate Charles Leclerc. Although Carlos Sainz's race performance and his wins were very, very much impeccable and outstanding. Nothing against Carlos. He's a really good driver. He's an excellent driver, but he's not as special, is he, as Max, as Lewis, as Leclerc, as Russell. He's not special he's not in the league of those guys. But is he in the top 10 of drivers? Of course, Carlos Sainz is in the top 10 of all drivers. By the way, we are on Twitter. The race creator is on Twitter, completely UnBias HQ. Welcome. We are on Twitter. I've got 6 followers. Thank you to everyone that has followed me so far. I'm going to give everyone a shout out. Zero Cool, Telepathy 011, Michael Jimison, Rems 14, King David 24, Black Sensei. Listen, huge shout out to everyone that has followed and support so far. I really appreciate it. We're going to continue to provide some really wonderful We're going to continue to provide some really wonderful analysis videos and updates. And I want to make it as professional as possible. And in the near future, we'll also be introducing other things. I won't say yet, but as the season unfolds, I want the content to continue to get better. I want the overall content to just continue getting better. So yeah, let's continue with what we were discussing. The fact that Ferrari, reports are coming out saying that they built a car to complement both Leclerc and Hamilton's driving style, ability, wants, and needs. It's saying here rivals have now slept, especially McLaren and Red Bull. There is no reason not to expect a rather tight 2025 World Championship in terms of performance. I certainly think so. I think all four top teams are going to go for it. Mercedes will definitely be there. They will definitely be there. I think last year was very much a research year for Mercedes to see what works, what doesn't. And I think they definitely identified the problem last year. Because let's be honest, sometimes that Mercedes car was on fire. Belgium, Silverstone, let's not forget the Las Vegas GP. There are sometimes that Mercedes were really there. So, I think they're going to be even stronger this year. I think Red Bull is always at a good platform to build upon, especially for the last few years. So there's no reason to not expect them to be involved in this year's championship. Similar thing for McLaren. McLaren has had a slow start to each season, which I hope they can avoid this year. But at the same time, they've got two brilliant drivers. So if that car is there, they will be competitive. And obviously Ferrari, they had the dip in Imola. But apart from that, they could have won that Constructors last year. So undoubtedly, 4 teams will be in that fight this year for Constructors title. How many drivers will be involved for the championship? It's definitely Max won it, so Max is definitely in it. I believe Lewis is definitely in it. Charles is definitely in it. Lando is definitely in it, and I'll put Russell in there as well. That's 5 drivers out of those top 4 teams that are definitely in that championship win. I believe Liam Lawson is the outlier. We don't know how fast he is. We don't know how quickly he will learn and catch up. We don't know if he will get along with the car that is built for Max Verstappen that doesn't drive as how he wants it to drive. And I also believe that Kimi Antonelli, it will take him some time to compete with the top guys. He will most likely win 1 or 2 races. Might even win more. He'll get a few podiums. He'll be there to help with the constructors, but I don't think he will be there for the championship. Similar thing with Oscar Piastri. I believe Oscar will definitely be there for, helping McLaren to win the constructors title again, perhaps. But will he be there to compete and to beat guys for that drivers championship? I don't think so. Excluding those 2 drivers, we got 5 drivers going for this title. Max, Lewis, Charles, Russell, and Lando, 5 drivers going for this title. I think it's going to be brilliant. I think the performance of the vehicles, some will be strong at the beginning, some will be strong halfway during the season, some will be strong at the end of the season. But considering that the fight will go for the entirety of the season, I don't think one car will be just faster than everyone else's. I think it's going to be a little bit balanced this year. You can expect some team to start out strong, probably fall off. You can expect some team to catch up during the year. You can expect some team to fall off during the end of the year or catch up again during the end of the year. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very exciting. Can't remember the last time we had a season that will be this competitive. Probably 2012. Every driver was involved in that 2012 season, Lewis would have won the championship easily in that season with his McLaren if the McLaren didn't just completely unreliable. Watching that season like it was yesterday, that car will just stop working for Lewis a lot of the time. And this was around the time he was switching teams. So now normally in the last year of technical regulations, the top teams have achieved significant optimization, albeit after making some mistakes. Let us remember that the process was also long due to the budget limitations imposed by financial regulations. I believe Ferrari also not winning the championship last year can only be graceful for them for the next 1, 2, 3 years because of aero time. The lower you are in the championship, the more aero time you will have. I believe Red Bull where did Red Bull finish in the championship? 3rd. So they're probably going to be having a lot more aero wind tunnel time, CFD time, because of how that point system works. The teams that are lower, they have more time to develop their cars. They get more allowance to develop their cars. The teams that are higher up the grid, they get less time to develop their cars. So that's going to impact a few teams. Mercedes have been low on that chart for a while, so they will have a decent amount of time to continue developing their car. So don't be surprised if Mercedes just gets better throughout the entirety of the year. Do not be surprised. Compared to the top teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren, don't be surprised if Mercedes caught up. New technical director Loic Serra arrived in Maranello 4 months ago, an established profile with ability to interpret performance in a very cold manner without being overwhelmed by great emotions. Reasonably, a new Roser cannot be the daughter of his management, but rather of the director of aerodynamics, Tondi, and in certain sense also of the impact of Vasseur, who covered the role of ad interim after Cardile's farewell. Nonetheless, the team confirmed that the French engineers has already intervened to develop the interactions work with the new Pirelli compound and supervise the latest changes. We can expect to see him more present on the track than was in past habits. The environment is healthy and the team is called to make progress in all areas to avoid going into crisis with pressure, not only for the tire as happened in 2024. Certainly having less limited car than the previous one would help because it would help the engineers to not struggle with such a short blanket in terms of operating windows. On the other hand, the strong reaction from Monza onwards must give rise to optimism. There is no reason to think Ferrari cannot now be more ready for the challenge, also through greater intention at all levels in conjunction with the arrival of the 7-time world champion. The Maranello technicians are optimistic that they can provide the drivers with an SF-25 that adapts well to driving characteristics of the pair of drivers. So this is where it gets interesting. Now, rather than similar in terms of settings, who favors the front axle to obtain a more decisive entry into the corner? That sounds a bit more like Charles' driving style. Technically speaking, looking at the value scenes in Abu Dhabi, Ferrari finished just a second behind McLaren. This was a race where, according to some engineers, Leclerc could have even won if he had not received a penalty at the start of the weekend. Oh yeah, that did happen. Leclerc did receive a penalty. The track will have to give its verdicts, keeping in mind that the F1 Championship with 24 races plus 6 sprint races is now a marathon where every resource in the development phase must be managed and calculated without errors. Also, for this reason, Ferrari should adopt a different approach from last season with small but constant improvements from race to race and not 3 or 4 large packages that put a risk of the understanding. Basically, that's hinting to what Ferrari did last year after they introduced some upgrades around Imola or just after Imola, and it didn't go as well. I believe they did well in Imola, or they did all right in Imola, but after that, it pretty much went downhill with the new things they brought to the car, you know. And I think this is what the article is trying to say. Well, how can they avoid that this year? You know, perhaps don't bring too much upgrades at the same time, especially if you're not confident in it. The front axle brakes with the pass but short nose remains. SF25 is equipped with a new inverted tie rod front suspension pull rod. Ferrari's choice is fundamentally aerodynamics in nature to make better use of the gap under the side pods and disturb the entry of floor as little as possible. Unfortunately, the floor is not visible, but from what we have learned from the evolution of the design compared to the end of 24 has been massive. The bodywork of the car appears tapered and still has a rear opening, albeit reduced, with a solution more similar to what we saw in McLaren. Ferrari inlets are more squared, which remains P-shaped with the upper part elongated and with a more particular shape. The triangular air intake above the driver remained dry without further increase that increased the flow. Naturally, this increased efficiency because it limits the disturbance of the flow direct towards the rear wing. Appearance can be deceiving. The dress may seem radical, not that change, but the measurements and mechanical geometry are all modified. So you see what they're saying. You know, the car on the outside shell might seem somewhat familiar or similar, but a lot of what's inside within the car has been reimagined and remodified and, you know, redesigned from the ground up. The car rear wing is now also new with a central V shape. So in the center of that wing, it's got a dip that dips down, like it really dips down. So that's a really interesting design interpretation. A lot of changes for Ferrari, if I'm being completely honest. And, you know, only time will tell if some of this works. You know, we've known for some time that Ferrari will change the suspension. They've been transparent where they didn't necessarily have to. So it's either they're very confident or they're just very nice. And here are some statements as well. And I quote, the SF-25 is an evolution of the 24, which was an excellent starting point. That said, we have worked hard, changing 99% of the car, evolving its architecture in order to maximize its performance. The statement continues, it also says the pull rod suspension is just the most obvious of the many significant changes we've made. The reason ahead will be a very tough challenge in which every thousandth will count. We're therefore ready to do our best to find these gains, even marginal ones, but can make the difference. We can't wait to be on track. And these were the first words from Loic Serra, new technical director at Ferrari. I don't think I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but I do apologize. So that is very interesting. More efficiency and flexible wings, but keep an eye on the technical directives that will arrive from Spanish GP. Okay, that's interesting. So the FIA has decided to slow down the race for push-ups. Wait, what? Slow down the race for push-ups with a U-turn compared to the recent past. All teams will have to adapt in time for a ninth race of the season in Barcelona, even if, as we anticipate, McLaren are uncertain by the flexi wing directives. During the presentation of the MCL39, the Italian technician stated that it is not causing us any headache and we will only have to implement small changes for Spain. It will certainly have an impact in terms of budget and choice. The technical office this year will carry forward the development of two completely different projects, thinking very soon about the regulation change of next year. The new SF-25 thus begins its long journey and is expected on track tomorrow for a traditional 200-kilometer shakedown. So that's already happened yesterday at Fiorano, where Charles was the first to take the car out, and then Lewis followed in the afternoon. That was very great as well to see Lewis and Charles driving the SF-25 around. Charles' immediate reaction so far seems very positive. That's also some reports coming out. Just something else to end on as well. Lewis breaks silence over mysterious Ferrari test crash. Okay, he had a little bump in Barcelona. It was really innocent, to be honest. But he always crashes within testing of starting with new teams. So everyone's looking at it as a good luck kind of thing. Like, this has happened before. So if history keeps repeating itself, oh my goodness, you should really be worried. So Ferrari launched a new car. We know that. I'm looking for statements in this article. If I can't find any statements, then we're not going to waste our time. Okay, here we go. At the launch of SF-25, Hamilton hinted that he was simply exploring the limits of his new machinery prior to the incidents. He said, I've enjoyed the testing that we've had. I've had to find limits of the car as quick as possible because I only have a handful of days. And he's right. He is absolutely right. I'd rather him find those limits and know where he can push the car, how he can push the car, what he can get away with, what he can't get away with. This is how Hamilton works. He works very quickly when he has to. And you've heard previous people who work with him can confirm this, that sometimes he works too fast for the engineers to keep up with. He's always trying so many different things, and they're kind of like left in the dust. No pun intended, but the man is fast. So it's just been fun. That's what Hamilton is saying. Each week has been so different. There's still a long road ahead of us and a lot of challenges for sure. But I think we've covered as much as could be possible to cover in the small time we've had so far. So that's his first part of his statements. He also added, the car is going to be my car, mine, and Charles' car. I've driven a couple of the older cars that were built for other drivers, but this one's been built for me and Charles. So just that alone is really cool. So he's excited. He's looking forward to having a car that is built for him and for Charles as well. So my goodness, he sounds excited. And this is something he's complained at Mercedes for quite some time. Like, they probably didn't listen to him enough. Not probably, they definitely didn't listen to him enough. They've confirmed it, he's confirmed it, and it's just like they could have listened to him sooner and went down a different direction. But it's cost them. It's cost them, they hit their driver, and it's cost them possibly championships, because McLaren won last year Constructors Championship. Get this, with a Mercedes engine in the back of the car. Same Mercedes engine that Mercedes was using. So Mercedes has no excuse why they were so slow in 2024 last year. And like I said, sometimes they were there, but sometimes they really weren't. For a team that's been a championship winning team for so long, they have no excuse when the engine was good enough to win McLaren the constructors. And I know currently in F1 it's not about engines, This conversation hasn't been about engines since the engine freeze. But in this case, you can bring the engine conversation back because you can be like, well, the engine is where you get that speed from. The aerodynamics is just where you get to control that speed and control, how the car behaves under that immense speed. So was the aerodynamics not good enough, or was it tire issues? It was a host of issues with Mercedes since the 2022 season, and porpoising led them down the wrong track. And that car was porpoising pretty much the entire bloody season. And the next season, they kept the concept, even though Hamilton told them, please don't. He gave them 3 years to get their shit together. They didn't. So the man has to move on with his life and his career. And he doesn't have a lot of time. His time is very finite, and he wants to continue racing, especially if he wins the 8. Windsor said it was actually a very, very good test for Hamilton, and I think all Hamilton fans can feel delighted at this test went. Yes, there was a shunt, but let's look at the build-up, that shunt, and the reason for it. Nothing to do with a bump on the road or any of that stuff. It was all tied to how good Lewis felt in the car and how he's feeling within the team. He feels great in the team. And that car, 23 Ferrari, was not the greatest of Grand Prix cars built by Ferrari. That's true. That was a 23 car. It wasn't necessarily the best. Even the 22 car was, more competitive, especially towards the Red Bull, but it was just so limited in terms of extracting performance from it. But the statement continues from Windsor, and I quote, but guess what? In that car, Lewis felt better than he's felt certainly over the last couple of years in Formula One in the Mercedes. Probably going back to the beginning of 2020, I would think. He's loved the feeling of the road again and actually being part of the car and kind of being at the top of the car and getting into the part of his DNA and what does it do in a race car. He loves that. He loves to be integrated into the team. And being at Mercedes, especially for the last couple of years, it just felt like they either weren't listening to him, they didn't trust his intuition enough, they felt like they were looking at what George was more doing, because George was the one who was getting George was the one who was getting top five finishes in 2022, while Lewis was like, okay, that's okay, that's good, George, good job, but we need to get back to winning championships, and in order to do that, we need to find out why the car's not working, so let me do all the experiments. I'll take all the risk. I'll finish 13th, 15th. You remember the Imola Grand Prix from 2022? My goodness. Lewis has really tried with that team, but when you try and they then don't listen to you and they listen to George because George is getting better performance, George, compare that to his Williams career, that's a win. Now, that's the guy you're going to listen to. You're not going to listen to your 7-time world champion who's led you down so much good path over the years. So after a while, Lewis was like, you're not listening to me the first season. You don't listen to me in 23. You don't listen to me in 24. In fact, Lewis made the decision to leave in 23, at the end of 23 when he signed a contract. So 2 years of them not listening to him, and he just felt like, yeah, the inevitable that they're slowly moving away from him, investing more into George. They want to invest more into younger drivers like Kimi Antonelli. Toto's looking at Max Verstappen like Max Verstappen is Jesus. Yeah. So naturally, Lewis was just like, well, I'd rather go to a team that really still wants me to be a part of the team and treats me like an equal, treats me like I'm a 7-time world champion, rather than treating me like you're just waiting for me to retire. That's what it felt like at Mercedes. Like they were just waiting for him to retire so they can be like, oh, thank you, Lewis. We really didn't want to have to ask you to retire. We're glad you came up with that idea on your own. Okay, I guess we'll put Antonelli in the car now, or hopefully we'll get Verstappen. It's like, Toto, Mercedes, what are you doing? You're the one who said we want to help Lewis to win the 8th world title after what happened to him. And it's like, what happened to that statement, Toto? What happened to that statement from Mercedes? Your word says one thing, your action says something very different. We saw through the bullshit. Lewis saw through the bullshit. You wanted to focus on younger drivers, and it's understandable. That's business. But when he decides to leave, understand this is also business. And this man, he means business. He's ready. He's still got the speed. You've seen it, Toto. And Toto knows he's still got the speed, but Toto is a businessman. He's not just thinking, yeah, Lewis still has the speed, but the kids are catching up and Mercedes needs to think 5, 10 years from now. And Lewis told him plain blank, I don't have another 10 years. I probably don't have another 5 years. I need to win now, Toto. So Lewis had to leave, man. And hope that made sense. But listen, we're going to end the video here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to see more. Remember to follow our Twitter. We're getting there. We are getting there. Listen, when we hit 44 followers, that's going to be something. You know, 44 is our number. But thank you all for subscribing, leaving a comment, leaving a like. I'm really proud of where the channel is going. You know, I really want to talk about things that no one else is talking about. That's why the videos I've made so far, I'm making videos that I don't see other people are making. You know, I'm getting ideas and I'm making things that no other people want to talk about. I'm going to talk about the uncomfortable things. I will do it, no matter how crazy I sound. LH44, I'm proud of that. Cult team Lewis Hamilton, I'm proud of that. You want to have beef? Listen, I love beef, but you know, it's expensive. So I'll see you in the next video. Peace.